2023 was the year of streamers and all-in-one devices coming in very different shapes. However, the notion of all-in-one device is actually quite debatable because a few years ago that would be a DAC with a preamp and headphone amplifier capabilities, but nowadays that notion is much broader because hi-fi manufacturers started adding also Bluetooth capabilities, room integration, wired and wireless streamers, open Android platforms, big displays, and so much more. And I'm very happy living in times like this. FiiO's R7 left a strong impression on me last year. It was very affordable, it had all the features a stereo had and a headphone ever dreamed about, even if it wasn't a perfect unit. At CES 2024, FiiO shown their newest do-it-all thingy, R9, which promises to solve all the issues I had with R7 while further improving its feature set. The price doubled, it right now costs $1,500 US, and let's check if R9 is a better unit in all respects. Let's go! Let's start with the build quality, and I have some excellent news and not so great news to share with you. The good news is that we have a bigger and a higher resolution screen right now, going from 5-inch 720p display on R7 to 6-inch Full HD display on the R9. And while that doesn't seem like a massive upgrade for a headphone sitting nearby a PC, having at your disposal this one in your close vicinity, but for a stereo head staying a few meters away from your setup, this is a very big improvement because I can see what is being displayed on its faceplate. R9 is slightly bigger compared to R7 and it's almost twice as heavy compared to R7, going from 1.3 kilos on R7 to 2.3 kilos on R9, and that already tells me that we are dealing with a higher quality product. The bad news is that FiiO went with a mirrored polish on its all sides except for its right side that has those heat dissipation things. While it looks like a hi-fi gem at first, once you start touching it and accessing all its inputs and outputs, ugly fingerprints will start appearing on its surface. They're including a cleaning cloth that will help you mitigate that issue, but I would really like to have a sandblasted aluminum finish that will protect it from scratches and fingerprints. When it comes to controls, we have a 4-pin XLR output, we have a 4.4mm balanced output, we have a regular headphone jack, we have a big 6-inch touchscreen in the middle, we have a volume wheel which also doubles as an on-off button, and an output selector below it. On its back, it gets way more complicated. You can use its built-in power supply and power it with the included AC cable, or you can go with an external power supply that can provide 15 volts and at least 3 amperes. Sadly, a FiiO's PL50 power supply provides a maximum current of 2 amperes, and while it will power the R9, once you go louder with planar or dynamic headphones, the unit might shut down completely, and that's why I do not recommend using it with the R9. We have a USB-C input that will unlock its USB DAC feature, an SD card slot for offline music listening, optical coaxial inputs and outputs are also present, including an Ethernet port and USB host feature to which you can hook up an external DAC and use only the streaming part of the R9. Compared to R7, R9 can now receive an HDMI signal and there's an HDMI ARC output as well, for the cinephile in you. And for analog outputs, we have a variable or fixed RCA and XLR outputs. On the inside, the portion that powers its open Android 10 operating system feels very similar to that of the R7. So we have the same CPU, the same 4 gigs of RAM memory, the same 64 gigs of ROM memory, but everything else that has to do with audio was built from the ground up. We now have 2 actual DAC chips, and those are higher performance ones as well. Those are ES9038 Pro DAC chips from ESS Technologies. Finally, we have a digital receiver from XMOS that was lacking on the R7, so you can forget completely about lags or lip sync issues that we had on the R7. The audio latency has been reduced considerably, so you can game or watch movies on R9, that wouldn't be really a problem. The headphone amplifier section was improved considerably on the R9, going from 3.6 watts on R7 to 7.3 watts of power per channel in 32 ohms via its balanced outputs, which is actually quite a lot of power for this size. Should be enough for most headphones out there, but more about that in a minute. The power supply was improved as well. We have now two power supplies, one for its analog section, one for its digital section. It's much beefier right now. I'm pretty sure that the power is coming exactly from there, and I'm pretty sure that it will also leave a positive impact on its final performance. The newest power supply also lowered the noise floor, going from 2.5 microvolts on R7 to 1.9 microvolts on the R9, which is actually quite impressive. Usually those numbers are reserved for battery-operated portable devices. That is a very rare sight with desktop components, so I'm pretty sure this will be noiseless with IEMs, but again, more about that in a minute. This is pretty much it, so let's hit some eardrums. If you go back and watch my R7 video, then you'll see me complaining about its sound quality. It wasn't that bad with the stock power supply, but the big drums were not dropping on my head. It was not very powerful, punchy, visceral sounding, especially in the bass. Electronica music simply lacked physicality and cojones and everything that an amazing bass should have. When I added the PL50 power supply, it improved the R7 considerably, and the difference wasn't a very small one. Just I flipped the switch from AC to DC power, and R7 just instantly was better sounding, especially when it comes to bass energy, bass impact, bass slam, and also especially in a stereo setup. You could simply feel that there is more bass and more sounds going all around your room, something that wasn't very apparent with the stock power supply of the R7. I tried the PL50 power supply with the R9, although this one is not recommended because it provides a maximum of 2 amperes. This one desires 3 amperes or more, but it worked, and I'm very happy to report that there is no difference whatsoever with or without the PL50 power supply in place, and that makes me very, very happy because finally this is an all-in-one unit that doesn't need additional devices to work and sound at its maximum. So it sounds great in its stock form. Just plug in the stock cable and start using this one. As simple as that. Switching from R7 to R9, the difference is actually quite substantial if you are a hardcore audiophile. While I really like the R7 in terms of features, and at that price point of 750 bucks, it had too many features actually for a stereo head and for a headfire, but when it comes to sound, it was lacking nerve. It was bright sounding in the treble, there was too much ringing, weird fake ringing in the treble, it was bright sounding. There was a little bit of listening fatigue, and it worked only with the PL50 power supply. The bass also was not that punchy and alive, and the mid-range was thin and was lacking presence. The R9 is a very different beast. There is so much more dynamics with this one. The sound is simply fuller bodied. The treble is no longer bright. It's very clear and crisp, actually clearer compared to R7, but at the same time I don't hear that excessive treble ringing. There is no digitus, glare, listening fatigue. This one is considerably better. Actually, this one doesn't sound so much like an ESS Sabre design, which is quite unusual because usually FiiO goes with a very linear, very transparent sound, which is the case, but this one is not exactly super linear. This is more fun sounding. The mid-range is definitely fuller bodied. There is a longer vibration of the vocal cords on the R9. You can feel the voices more guttural sounding, and the bass is simply a 180-degree turn compared to R9. There is so much more presence, punch, life in the bass compared to R7. It works much better with hard-to-drive headphones compared to R7, and it's not only about the power, but just the overall tonality of the R9. FiiO always put a bigger accent on treble delivery, treble information, treble extension, especially since they started using those THX AAA achromatic audio amplifier modules with their newest devices. And I can certainly say that Q7, M17, K9 Pro were very linear, very transparent, but not very natural or organic sounding. And I can sense that R9 is a little bit different. So this one has a good linearity in a way because it's exactly as transparent and clean and resolving, but it's more fun sounding in a way. There is simply a little bit more life on the R9 compared to all those devices, and also versus R7 as well. All in all, R9 feels like a natural evolution from R7, catering not only to cinephiles and gamers, but also to hardcore audiophiles with a more natural tonality this time around. If you are a headphile, then you should know that 5 gain levels are being provided, and since I wanted to know how it sounds and how it works with high-performance headphones, I immediately engaged that ultra-high gain mode. And you can certainly feel right off the bat those 7.3 watts of power when dynamics are going wild, because this one is quite different compared to R7. With regular headphones like FiiO FT5, with my daily driver headphones like Meze Elite, Keneton Rogner and RZHK Ribdis, maximum I could go volume-wise would be around 70 out of 120 steps available, but that is maximum for a minute because it's very, very loud. My actual listening volume would sit at around 60 to 62, so clearly I have a lot of headroom remaining on top. It almost feels limitless with these headphones. With Sennheiser HD at 100S, I could go maximum to 78, but again, maximum for a minute. My actual listening volume would be around 72. And with HiFi-Man Susvara, I need to go much, much louder to 100, 105, which is very similar to R7. On R7, I was going to 110 steps, but Susvara is sounding completely different compared to R7. Although other headphones better, but not a massive difference. But with the HiFi-Man Susvara, it's like listening to a completely different headphone on the R9 compared to R7. The bass was nowhere to be found on the R7. It was simply lacking information, punch, and it was too ethereal, too soft sounding. On the R9, that is no longer the case. This sounds almost like a super high-end headphone amplifier. I've heard better, of course, but at this price point, I don't believe I tried a better headphone amplifier with the HiFi-Man Susvara. These are definitely punchy and alive sounding, so that is more than good enough for me. I want to briefly touch base its performance with ultra-sensitive IEMs. Ever since FiiO started crafting portable digital audio players, especially those that are using THX AAA amplifier modules which are cancelling the noise, like the newest M11S, M15S, M17, then you know that those are completely noiseless with any kinds of IEMs, ultra-sensitive IEMs. Here we have dual power supplies with an amazing number of voltage regulators, which are lowering the noise as well. And we also have those THX AAA amplifier modules, which are also cancelling the noises by default. The noise floor is very low on this one, 1.9 microvolts of noise. That is crazy low, crazy low. And if you are using the very first free gain settings with any IEM that we have at your disposal, then it will sound like it's not even powered on. So you can plug in, you can unplug your IEMs and you'll hear basically nothing. The background is as black. This one is noiseless with IEMs, so that is an amazing thing to do. I don't use IEMs with desktop components, but if you want a single unit to drive your entire headphone collection, desktop headphones, ultra-sensitive IEMs, then R9 is a very easy recommendation. I watched a few videos over YouTube, 2 movies in front of my PC, and also I gamed a little for a few days, and all the issues that were present on the R7 were no longer there on the R9. I don't have the time for competitive gaming, but several RPGs, shooters, and racing games worked outstanding with the R9. I still feel that R9 is at its inception. I mean, I'm still on the firmware 1.01, but even in its early days, I didn't get hiccups, stutters, lip sync issues, or anything like that when used as a USB DAC. The XMOS digital receiver solved all those issues, and even using it driverless on a Windows 11 machine, it worked flawlessly in my case. I was curious how it will handle third-party DACs attached to its USB Type-A port on its back, and I tried an Artwire DAC, I tried an FPGA DAC, and also a regular chip-based DACs, and unsurprisingly, it worked outstanding with all of them. In this case, R9 transforms into a streamer and digital transport, leaving the digital tone-along duties to an external converter. I understand why you might do that with the R7, which lacked naturalness, an open wide soundstage, and just a fun sound signature, but I don't understand why would you do that with the R9, because I believe its DAC section is considered better than that of the R7. Moving on to frequency response, R9 is no longer lacking nerve, energy, and bass slam. That was the case with the R7, which was not my cup of tea when rendering bass information, but that is no longer the case with the R9. There is more rumble down low, a nicer layering, and a clearer overall performance. Also, you can feel those 7.3 watts of power, not only in terms of bass punch and bass slam, but also in terms of control of the bass, especially with hard-to-drive headphones like headphones Svara LCD4 and HD800S, because the bass is no longer all over the place, but much tighter, much grippier in a way. At first, I was expecting a thinner mid-range, very similar to that of the R7, but luckily FiiO made this one just more enjoyable sounding in the mid-range. As I was saying before, there is simply more vibration in the mid-range, more presence, the voices are more guttural, you can feel those vocal cords vibrating a little bit more. There is definitely more life in the mid-range compared to R7, not only with the R7 but also with the K9 as well. So definitely this one is linear, but it's also fun at the same time. R9 is no longer thin sounding, and I definitely enjoyed my rock tunes, my jazz and acoustic music in general more on R9 compared to R7. I no longer need to do a system matching, and I no longer need to use that PL50 power supply for it to sound great in the mid-range. Trebles are crystal clear, very transparent, they are reaching upper regions like 16 kHz, but there is no digitus, there is no listening fatigue, no brightness whatsoever. That was the case with the R7, and this is a little bit unusual because usually when you hear a THX triple amplifier together with an ESS Sabre DAC, you might get some of that digitus, some slight ringing in the treble, some over sharpness, but that is not happening with the R7, and I'm pretty sure that FiiO did something to the power supply implementation to add some liveliness and some naturalness into the R9. Since it already works great with bright tilted headphones like HiFiMan headphones for example, and also with those Monitor Audio Platinum 200 which also have hotter trebles, then I believe it will work great with pretty much anything. Wrapping up, R7 impressed me with its feature set and with a surprisingly low price point, but sound quality wise, it was not something that I was recommending left and right for my viewers. However, R9 is a very different beast altogether. We have a bigger display, we have a remote control, which is a godsend for stereo heads. It no longer lags with games and movies. We have some video capabilities, which are not so important to me, but maybe those are important to you. Power doubled, and it can now drive much heavier loads, but the biggest improvements were felt when simply trying to enjoy my tunes. The only complaint I have with the R9 is the fingerprint magnet case, which bothers me slightly, but even as it is, I believe that R9 is a slam dunk from FiiO, and I cannot wait to know what is coming next from these guys. Thank you guys for watching, this is it, don't forget to drop a like and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the coming days.